Behind the waterfall, Marie floats, trapped in an endless sleep. Her sister watches a monitor, displaying 2 heartbeats. She punches the monitor, her hand half skeletal, half decaying flesh. It still won't work! In this video, we'll explore the 3 plot hooks that kept my players so engaged they didn't take a single rest, and how to write one for your own game. The 3 plot hooks are the map that made them start, the rivals they hated, and the elf who made them cry when they saved them. This is part 1 of how to run the Tomb of Gornelle, the first multi-session adventure I ran for Draw Steel. Today, we'll look at how to hook your players, but without a good title and thumbnail, how are they... No, that's not quite right. The map. The map is probably the biggest risk I took when prepping this adventure. The map is probably the only reason this adventure didn't go straight into the bin. Well, kinda. We last left our heroes after they defeated the possessed knight Enzo and had saved the goblins from his not-so-nice rule. In the castle, they found this map. They didn't think of much of it at first. They had to get back to Tenerol, they had to find a pub, and once they were there, they had a few things to discuss. They had a few other plot hooks, but none of them were really as interesting to them as the map they had found. And partly it wasn't luck, because they also wanted to learn about the elves. I had one player I knew cared about lore, and I had one player who had made learning about the elves part of their backstory. I knew that when I put the elves in front of them, this is what they were going to go for. It was partly a risky play, they could have just ignored it, but the thing that really solved this was I didn't tell them where the map was of, so they didn't have all the answers, they cared about it, they wanted to figure it out. And once they figured it out, they couldn't be 100% sure without going to the location they think the map was of and doing some exploring. They were immediately more invested in this than anything else they could have done. If you see, here's the map. They guessed correctly it was here, but they also thought it could have been here or here by looking over it, by having to figure that out. They felt a connection to it. It wasn't something I told them. I hadn't said, go to Kirken and you will find this powerful magic item, you'll go on this quest. No. They figured it out. They felt ownership. They wanted to do it. If the players had gone for the side quest, the main part of this adventure, as you'll find out, is 5 MacGuffins. It's a race between the players and some rivals. You're going to find out later, the villains are starting with 1. But every respite the players had taken, the villains were going to gain another, regardless of whether they were on this quest or another. If they'd gone on one of the side quests, each time they took a respite, the villains would have gained 1 of the MacGuffins. So as it went on, the longer they waited, the harder it would have been for them to be able to have an impact in this adventure. If they just ignored it entirely, the villains would have won. This is all part of the antagonists wanting to win. If the heroes don't turn up, the antagonists are not going to wait until the heroes come to stop them. They're going to keep going with their plans. What are the 3 ingredients you need to do this yourself? 1, I think you need a physical handout. I think it needs to be something the players can touch and read and feel. If it's just a verbal thing, they're not going to get that ownership. They're not going to be able to figure it out by themselves. 2, you need other options. Anytime the players are making a decision whether to go on a quest or not, if they only have this quest available, it's not as interesting, it's not as ownership, they don't have any ownership of it. They need to feel like they're making a choice of what to do. 3, you need to know what the punishment is if they don't do the quest. If they don't go do this, if they go and do something else, then they're going to have a much harder time. Something bad needs to happen, because if there's no downside to not making a choice, then it's not a choice, it's a to-do list. But if the other adventures go away after enough time or different things happen, then that's not okay. You can do this the same way I did. All you need is you need your first prop and you need a second version of it for the players to look at. So in my case, I had the fancy world prop of the world so they could look at it, and I had the parchment world prop, so I knew these 2 different things were an option. And that meant there was just enough difference for the players to have to figure something out. It wasn't just a segment of the other map. And it made it feel a little bit older, parchment, that's what that sells to us. For part number 2, I had 4 or 5 quest handouts. I don't quite remember exactly. Pause the video now, they'll be on screen so you can see them, you can have a read through them if you want to see what the other ones I did for your own idea. They're nothing that groundbreaking. For part 3, it's kind of simple enough if you just think about your villains complexly. If you know what they're going to do, then you just have them do it. What would happen if the players weren't there, and make it happen? With that, if all's gone to plan, your players should be heading to Kirken, or your equivalent of Kirken, and that's where we get onto the next part of it. How do we make them want to do the quest now? The Troubleshooters, brought to you by the Emerald Line, the name that still makes one of my players grit his teeth in anger, just thinking about them. Yes, I'm talking about you, Daniel. Once they arrived in Kirken, like any party, they went to the pub, or the tavern, or the saloon, I guess, if that's the word you want to use. The Emerald Line is another adventuring party. They should be friends, right? But they're not, because these guys are not heroes. From a mechanics point of view, they're just using the Draw Steel rivals. Having run this adventure, I think don't use the rivals. They're not the best for what you think they're going to do when you read them. They're really good as the key boss of another group of people. But I think what I'd do differently if I ran it again is I'd probably make Markel a rival, and then I'd pick stat blocks for each of the other guys, and then use the malice options from the rivals overall. I think that would be the better way to run it. Elite stat blocks are designed to kind of take up 2 players at a time, so it meant the combats could get quite bogged down quite quickly. In the words of the Troubadour, let me introduce tonight's players. The leader of the group, who's an archer, is Markel Orbero. He's the eldest son of Vincenzo Obrero, the richest merchant in Tenerol. But he likes to pretend he's a man of the people. He's his father's favourite by far, and he was taught up to think of himself as better than other people. He's got a posh English voice like my own, and he's tall, dark, and brooding. He could definitely be a love interest in another game. The next person is the mage, a conduit, Toghon. They're an orc. Toghon was thrown out their church for massacring another brand of orcs. They're a real psychopath. They're only here for the wand, and they will turn on the rest of their party to get it. They will have a nice chat to you, they'll be your friend, but they're a bit of a compulsive liar. They're smooth, they're a little bored, but they have dead eyes. I know, a bit of a cliche. They have a specialist, Markel Orbero, another human. He's the younger brother of Markel, and he is, if you've ever heard the English expression, the spare. You have the heir, and you have the spare. And his father has made sure that he knows that he is the spare. He's also got a posh voice, but he's a little shorter, a little nimbler, and he likes to keep out of the way. He typically stands back when Markel is talking. And finally, we have the Fury, or Barbarian, Luna, the Hakan. Hakan and Drawsteel have something called Doomsight, which lets them see their own death. Some of them anyway. And Luna saw that their death was going to come from someone they trusted the most, a friend or a family member. So they left. They left where their hometown is. They've not made any friends or any connections, because in their head, if they don't have any friends, if they don't have anyone they trust, they can't die. They're 8 foot tall, they're mostly mute, and they talk in grunts. They're not, the classic bodyguard. So how did I get my players to hate them? Trigger warning for racism, a touch of genocide. There'll be timescope. Timescope? There'll be a timestamp on screen. Relatively, this is kind of a little bit simple. It's a tip I got from a friend of mine who's been running for far longer than I. When they walk into the pub, the Emerald Line are boasting about their achievements. They're boasting about having killed the leader of the lizard folk. This native had the wand, and they wanted it, so they tricked it, got him to show it to them, took the wand, killed him and his guards, and left. And they're now boasting about it in the pub to their adoring fans, about how the city is saved. This is all ignoring the fact that the city had a perfectly friendly and amicable trading agreement with the lizard folk. They didn't need to kill them. They weren't any threat. They could have traded for it probably, but no, that's how they did it. When they walk in, he goes, "Oh, hello, fellow adventurers. What brings you to Kirken? Please ask any question. We're happy to show you around, show how this place works. But do watch out for the lizard folk. The ones who are left are a little angry." That was already enough for my players to hate them until they discovered this. Now, my party, we're all little lefty liberals like snowflakes, right? So how did I make them hate these guys even more than they already did? Capitalism, baby. The troubleshooters are sponsored. They are an adventuring party who are sponsored by their dad's company. They are not the troubleshooters. They are the troubleshooters brought to you by the Emerald Line. Isn't that so beautifully awful? They wear sponsored garb. Their armor has the sponsorships on them. They have some other companies written on them as well because they sell sponsorship. So that when storytellers tell the marvelous stories of the troubleshooters, do you know what they're going to call them? The Line, or the Emerald Line. That's sponsorship for their father. But it gets better because they're not even good at it. They're not sponsored because they're a good adventuring party who's worked their way up. No. They're sponsored because their leader, Markel, is daddy's little special boy, isn't he? And he can't be unemployed, so he gets to go play pretend as an adventurer. He gets to have all of the fun and none of the consequences and do all of these evil things and gets paid by his dad to do it. Isn't that lovely? So how do you make your own antagonist to the party? Someone they will really, really not get on with. Well, rivals are a pretty classic playbook, but I think a really good example of them is Team Rocket from Pokemon. Because a really important part of this, to me, is the rivals need to have clear goals. They need to have goals the party can object to. They don't have to be different to the party's goals necessarily, but they definitely need to conflict. If the party wants to do A, The villain needs to also want to do A or stop A, and that way they're always going to come into conflict. The second one, as stated in the back of the hero's book, is quite a good one. It's sins. What makes these people bad, right? We already know classism, racism, probably a touch of misogyny, because that's easy to throw in there with that mixture. And a little bit of genocide, just a little sprinkling, right? It's just like, they did some nasty things, right? I don't think there's many parties of heroes out there who are going to look at those guys and a little bit of racism, a little bit of genocide and go, these are our friends. 3, they need methods. This is how they go about it. Because if they're not the heroes, they're the villains or the anti-heroes, their methods need to be bad. They need to do bad things to get what they want. The heroes need to save the world and not kill everyone along the way. These guys might want to save the world, but they might be willing to, burn down the city to do it. And 4, and I think this is quite useful for antagonists, they need to have already started. Every time I've run a successful antagonist, it needs to start from a position where the antagonist is kind of ahead and getting what they want. Because that lights a fire under the players' bellies. Knowing, the antagonists are about, and they are going to try and do stuff, but they haven't done stuff yet. Knowing the antagonists are about, and they've already started, and they're already ahead of you, and they're already doing bad stuff, that makes the players want to get out. And if they don't like those guys, now they're mad. And they've already got a reason to get revenge. And players love vengeance. They just do. Markel Gornelle. Imagine you swim down through murky water in a swamp to an opening. The opening has like an air bubble on it, like air trapped in a jug underneath the bath water. As you drop down into it, you fall into a room that you can breathe. But as you land, undead rise up all around you in 4 directions. You have to fight just to survive. But halfway through that fight, as you're winning, a ghostly pale white figure steps out of the steps above you and goes, "Auntie, uncle, why aren't you welcoming our guests?" And she looks at you and goes, "I'm so sorry my family's being so rude. Come, join me for tea." As she walks into the other room, she tells you about her sister, who's definitely coming back to visit her soon. She's gone looking for medicine, I'm a little sick and she's gonna go get medicine for me. And as she sits down on the edge of a tombstone, you realise it's got Marie underneath written on it. And you ask her, "What's your name?" And she goes, "Marie, of course." She looks young, this Marie, no more than 20, and you can see on her tombstone, she was only 20 years old when she died. So young for an elf. You get her to tell you a little bit. Her sister was a great wizard who was going to save her, she tells you. She still is. But she's been gone a long while. Marie's a little worried about her. Where has she gone? She talks about her family all around her, but as you look around the room, all you see is the sarcophaguses, the tombs of dead elves, going back generations in this Gornelle family. Marie was just one of many. And you ask her, "Why are you so sure your sister will come back?" And she goes, "Oh," and she opens a little box and she pulls out a little part of a wand. It looks like the hilt of a wand, thin silver, so thin it looks like it might break. And she shows it to you and goes, "Because she gave me this. She told me when she comes back, she'll need it." And you manage to convince her, maybe something's happened. Maybe someone needs to save her sister. And Mary goes, "That would make sense. I've been here such a long time." And after a short conversation, you're able to convince Mary to give you the wand. And as you take it, she starts to fade and she goes, "Please, I've been here such a long time. Find my sister." What would you do? If I'm totally honest, this is probably the hardest part of the hook to replicate. I've tried things like this a couple of times, and this one is the one that worked the best. Maybe it was the player who wanted to find more about elves. Maybe it was the fact that some of them had younger siblings. Maybe it was the delivery. Maybe it was the moment. Maybe it was the fact that they were all due to draw steel, and this was the first kind of emotionally charged adventure we'd be on. But whatever way, this really, really worked. And I've got 3 things that I think really helped. I think number 1 is let the players meet the person they're saving. I think the classic way to do this is meet the NPC before they're kidnapped. But that has some issues. It can work just as well to meet the NPC who's been trapped for 1,000 years, like this. And that way the players don't just know, oh, there is an NPC who's trapped for 1,000 years. No, it's the NPC is in front of you. You're talking to them, you get to see it. You get to see the little bit of insanity that comes with. 2, pull the heartstrings. You have to make the players feel it. You have to give them the emotion. It's a little bit of acting, it's a little bit of ambiance, it's a little bit of body language, a little lean into the camera, a little bit of a softer voice, just soften how you normally speak, can be enough just to really sell that idea. Playing music at the right time. It's about priming the players for that emotion. And finally, with any good plot hook, it's a verb. Find the sister, just save the girl. I'll link Matt's video in the description and it will pop up there. That's the video, folks. If you're watching it, that's a really good sign. It's clear that you as a director care, and you want you and your players to have a good experience. And you should be proud of that. But make sure you're not forgetting to actually run. If this is your 10th video in a row on this kind of subject, if you're worried about how to hook your players, the best way you can get better at it is just playing. Players, in my experience, are pretty easy to hook. If they want to play your game, if they want to have fun, if you've communicated what this game is going to be about, they want to be hooked, they want to have fun, and you don't have to go through all this work for every adventure. If you enjoyed this video, YouTube should be showing you on the left a nice little video that it thinks you'll like, and on the right will be a link to the playlist for this series. If you're watching this in the future, you should see more videos. If you see more than 5 videos, the series is probably done and you can go on a fun binge watch. And thank you for taking your time to listen today. There's a million things you could have been doing today, but you decided to come here, listen to me, discuss some draw steel, discuss some character design, discuss some plot hooks, and that means a lot. So thank you very much.